All right, guys, welcome back to our second virtual High Achievers program video. So, the very first thing that I'm going to talk about is last week of program and some updates and things that I have for you guys. First off, I am super proud and super impressed by every single one of you guys and your participation in virtual program. You guys, we had a little bit of ups and downs as far as technology, but because it'll follow the same wavelength that we did last week, it should get easier and easier. Y'all did an awesome job for the most part with submitting things, especially Wellness Wednesday. You guys made me and Miss Sequina super duper proud, right? So let's keep it going. One of the things I want to update is this week and this week only, our Tuesday will be different than what I originally said. The calendar will be updated. Instead of working on lesson plans on this Tuesday, what we will be doing is another little bit of a scavenger hunt virtual online situation, but it'll be related to podcasts, so we can wrap up that podcast section that we were doing all semester, kind of finalize our thoughts and ideas on the podcast, and that will be in very similar format to the scavenger hunt Google Drive. It's going to be similar but for podcasts, but I'll include all the links and all the things that you need to be able to complete this, and then you'll fill it out and submit it in the drive. So that'll be just for this week, and then we'll do Wednesday and Thursday as normal. Moving forward, Tuesdays will be where you update any where you update any changes and feedback that your group leader has given you based on the lesson plans that you turned in. So you turn in your lesson plan Thursday, we look over them, and then we upload them by Tuesday. So on Tuesdays, you'll be able to get feedback. Now, you'll do your feedback this week because on Tuesday, like I said, we will be doing our other scavenger hunt. But moving forward, you'll be updating Wellness Wednesday, new lesson plan. Updating Wellness Wednesday, new lesson plan, etc. for the months of April. And then May will look a little bit different. So another thing that I want to talk to you guys about is attendance. You guys no longer have to worry about signing in. I know I sent an email and I talked about this. This is just because of the simple fact that a lot of people were signing in, but we're not submitting the assignment for the day. And so it's very important to note that if you do not submit your assignment for the day, you were not in program and you do not get that attendance. So moving forward, you all do not have to worry about attendance at all. At the end of the program day, your group leaders will message the person who is responsible for that, who will be Malia, and we'll say, hey Malia, from my group, the only people who submitted their assignments for the day is A, B, C, and D. And she will then go in on attendance and mark A, B, C, and D absent. A, B, C, and D in attendance. If you submit it, you get your attendance for that day. If you don't, you are considered absent. So keep that in mind. Your deadline is always 6:30. However, if you have extenuating circumstances, you can always reach out to your group leader or myself, and we will work with you and probably give you up until 8 o'clock. Now, if for whatever reason, due to a family emergency, that you cannot submit something, that's totally fine. You're not kicked out of program, but you will lose attendance for that day. And just keep in mind that you can't miss too many days, or it'll count against you when we go over our ratings rubric, because remember, you have to have 90% or better, right? So keep all those things in mind. If you know that you have something to do that day, start early. I honestly usually email everything out by like 11. So you guys have enough time to start early and get things done. If you cannot get it done by 8 o'clock that day, you're just considered absent for that day. You have more than enough time to get anything that you need to be done. Every assignment shouldn't take more than an hour. So all we need is an hour of your time. All we need for a program is 2 hours of your time. So you have to think of it as a similar commitment to just like when you would come to a High Achievers program. It wasn't a super long program, but you had to be there. You had to make it a priority to get your attendance. It's the same virtually. You have to know for that block of time that you have to submit your assignment, check it, and do whatever you need to get attendance for that day. Help your group members if you're seeing that they're struggling with uploading or they don't understand. So now that we're off that, the main point of this video is to talk to you guys again about lesson plans and what constitute a completed lesson plan. So that means that if you turn in a lesson plan but it has like one line in every section, that is not a completed lesson plan. You did not get attendance for that day. Now, most people got feedback for that group leader so they could still get attendance and say, hey, you need to add more here, here, here. And if you did, you got attendance. If you didn't, it doesn't count, because a completed lesson plan is all you have to do. So we're going to start one. I'm going to give you an example. I will also share this in the individual lesson plan drive for this week so you can see what a good example of a lesson plan is. This is a lesson plan that is based on chemistry, right? So the very first section of the lesson plan document says, what will the kids need to know, right? So this experiment is for the students to find out what are some objects that can or cannot be made out of milk. And the answers are belt buckles, buttons, jewelries, and beads. Those are the things that can be made out of milk, right? The follow-up question and background information that they will need to know is, what is plastic? Why do they need to know that? Because buttons, jewelry, beads, and different things are sometimes made out of plastic, right? So the first thing that they need to know in this experience is, what is plastic? You know, what are buttons, belts, jewelry, and beads, if you feel like they may not know what that is. And then you would write what that is. Then your next question would be, what is a molecule, right? And you will write on the lesson plan what that is. And then the next question will be, what is a polymer? Because these are all things that are going to go into making these different materials, which is why that is the background information. So when you think about your question, like the example I used before, we had an activity where you had to separate the gluten from starch, right? Before the kids go into doing an activity about separating gluten from starch, they first must know what gluten is. They first must know what starch is. So your lesson beginning, your background information will be what gluten is, what starch is, and what any other things that they'll use in this experiment or they'll learn about this experiment is before they even do it. So when you're like, hey, can you hand me the thermostat? Make sure they know what a thermostat is. When you're like, hey, can you pour in the iodine? If they need iodine, they need to know what iodine is. So that background information is you letting the students know anything pertaining to your experiment that they will need to know. Now, of course, the assumption is that the kids probably know what a belt buckle is, what buttons are, what jewelry are, what beads are, and what milk is. So this person did not choose to say, what is milk? However, I'm sure she'll say, hey, are you guys familiar? Is there anything that you guys don't know what it is? Let them know. But for the things that you're sure they probably don't know, like a polymer, like a molecule, like maybe plastic or how it's made or what it is, go ahead and have that conversation, right? So then another thing that you could do to think about as an intro, right? If you're talking about making stuff and you're talking about making it a different way, like in this case, you're going to try to make objects out of milk. A good intro or starting to your lesson would be maybe show a video, short video, of how plastic is originally made or how beads are originally made, or, you know, how belt buckles or whatever are originally made, because we're going to try to make them out of milk. But this is what they originally made. Give them that background information. Or if there's a video on how to make stuff out of milk before you actually do it, you can show them to kind of get them an idea of what they're going to be doing. But that is the background piece, preparing them with all the knowledge that they need to complete whatever the experiment is. The next section is activity. So you see how full this is? If yours is not this full, it is incomplete. A lot of people have been writing, I'm going to explain to them the experiment step by step in activity. No. What you're going to write in here is every single step that you are going to tell the students. So for example, if your experiment starts out with splitting them into 4 groups, the first thing that you're going to write is, first, I'm going to split the students into 4 groups. Then I'm going to assign a high achiever to each group. Then we are going to put milk on each table. After that, we are going to designate each table to a different item. So one table is going to be the beads table, one table is going to be the jewelry table, one is going to be the buttons, and one's going to be this. Then after that, we are going to begin our experiment. To begin our experiment, the first thing we're going to do is pour in salt into everything. If they're making beads, they have to pour this in. If they have to, you know what I'm saying? Your activity part is literally you writing step by step, literally, what you are going to do. It needs to be so broken down step by step, no matter how stupid it may feel, that any high achiever can pick up your lesson plan, have no background information, follow the steps on this paper, and still be successful, right? So I'll read you a little bit of this lesson plan, right? In this activity, kids will learn how plastic can be made out of milk. They will first figure this out by taking 4 cups of vinegar and all different teaspoons, which are 1, 2, 4, and 8, and mixing it with 4 different cups of heated milk. After the mixture is poured by the counselor, because it will be too hot for the kids to touch, they will slowly stir in the milk and the vinegar. After they see the vinegar begin to clump, and it will turn into casein, which is something that she's going to talk about in the beginning, they'll add this, right? So you see how she's broken down step by step the experiment. Now this one is something I haven't given feedback. The only feedback I probably will give is explain how you're splitting them up, etc., etc. But notice how it literally says they're going to take 4 cups of this. They're going to need this. They're going to pour this in. When they pour this in, it's going to look like this. After it looks like this, then we're going to add this. After they add this, they have to mix it 3 times. After they mix it 3 times, they got to flip it and reverse it, okay? Do you see how specific? You need to be able to do step by step what is happening in this experiment. Step by step, what is it going to look like so you know that it looks right or you're doing it right, etc., etc. That is how detailed it needs to be. That is why you have 1.5 hours to 2 hours to submit this. So putting 2, 3, 4 lines and that's it is not acceptable, because I can tell you for a fact nobody will be able to pick this up and do that experiment. That's how you by yourself can judge if your lesson plan is complete. If you can say that any single person in this room can pick this up, follow it step by step, and do the experiment correctly. If you say to yourself, oh, they may not know that they need to do this, or they may not know it has to be split up, or they can't put too much of this, then state that. The next thing is, what will the students get out of this activity, right? So the kids will learn what a polymer is. They will know what type of protein is milk. They'll learn how to knead dough. So this may be a good opportunity to think of, they probably need to know what kneading means. They'll learn that you can make plastic out of milk. They'll learn what casein is, etc., etc., right? Then you'll have to talk about bringing it all together. What are your talking points? This is where people get confused as well. First, if you didn't have a video or didn't show a video in the beginning, then show it in the end. Show a video, maybe that'll wrap it all up here, and include that in your lesson plan, right? And then your talking points. You're going to review before the experiment. Then you're going to review the vocabulary you went over in the beginning. You're going to talk about what you did today. So she said, what are some properties of plastic? What are plastics made of today? What else is in milk besides casein? If the kids are small, only ask the first 2 questions. So make sure you include your changes if the students are older or younger. Name some items, let the kids explain their observations, what happened, whatever, right? So when you have these questions written down that you're going to ask them, it is imperative that you know the answer. So on your sheet, you need to put the answers as well to your own questions. Why? Because again, somebody needs to be able to pick up your lesson plan and just do it. So if you're saying, what is the smallest unit of a polymer as your question, what if I, the high achiever, picking up your experiment, I don't know what that is? Make sure the answer is there. Make sure they understand what they need to know as a presenter to present the experiment the same way you would if this was your experiment. And then supplies and material. This is super important. Make sure that you put all the supplies and materials that you need for the experiment. And not just in general. Don't say mugs, teaspoons, thermometer, spoons. If you are splitting them up in 4 groups, you need to say, we'll need 4 mugs, 4 different tablespoons, 4 thermometers. If you're splitting them in 3, say 3. You need to be very specific about what you need to complete the experiment the way that you wrote it here. So don't just say in general, be specific. If every group needs 4 cups, then you'll need, and you have 4 groups, that's 16 cups that you need. That is how specific your lesson plans needs to be. Now, when you're thinking about your lesson plan, especially in this part, right, and that's going to be some more feedback that I add to this, but this is still one of the greatest examples. Make sure you're including the scientific method, especially if you're mostly doing just science, right? The scientific method is going to help you create a full lesson plan, right? So the first step is to ask a question, right? What are some objects that can be made out of milk? That is the very first step. And then answer the questions, right? And then, you'll do that background information. Then the kids will form their hypothesis. Do you think that we can make plastic out of milk? Yes or no? Do you think out of the 4 things, which ones do you think we can make? However you want to do the hypothesis, right? After the hypothesis portion, do the actual experiment. After the experiment, you're going to analyze your data, right? And what happened in the experiment. Let's see. How many people were successful in making the belt buckles? How many people were successful in making buttons? Were we able to make the jewelry? Were we able to make the beads? Yes or no? Create some type of chart, form, paper where they can keep up with their data, or you can write it on the board. But there has to be a place that you're analyzing that data, that you're writing down that data so they can look at what they originally thought was going to happen and what actually happened. Because this is going to be your discussion points in the end, right? So then after you analyze the data, you're going to draw a conclusion. Can you make plastic out of milk? Yes. No. Kinda. Does your experiment have to be perfect? No. Is it going to be successful every single time? No. That's science. If your experiment fails, you're going to say, all right, what do you think we did wrong? Start going through. Maybe, do you think we added too much this? Do you think we didn't have enough this? Do you think that the experiment would have been successful if we did this? Do you think that it would have never been successful and this experiment doesn't work? There's always a way to have a discussion around this. These are very important things to think about. If you know that your lesson plan doesn't answer all the questions in the scientific method, even if you don't specifically write it out like that, then you probably are missing some stuff. If you notice that your lesson plan is not written in such a way that any person can pick it up and answer the questions, then your lesson plan is not complete. If you know that you're asking questions but you don't know the answer to, or the answers aren't written on the paper, then your lesson plan is complete. If you know that your activity description is not written step by step, literally, take the students, split them into 4 groups, 5 kids a group. We're going to put 4 cups on each desk. Then everybody's going to pour the salt into here. After they pour the salt, they're going to pour the milk. After they pour the milk, they're going to mix it until it gets clumpy. When it's clumping, we're going to add food coloring. After we add food coloring, we're going to let it sit for 5 minutes. While it's sitting for 5 minutes, we're going to watch a video. When the video's done, we're going to look back at our stuff and we're going to knead it, which kneading literally means like pressing it into a shape like the way you do dough for a pizza, right? After we knead it, we're going to flip it. After we flip it, we're going to throw it in the trash. After we throw it in the trash, we're going to check on it in 5 minutes and see if it turns into a magician and flies away. You know what I mean? Like, whatever you think the experiment, you need to write down step by step like that, but being realistic. What is going to happen, okay? That is how you have a complete lesson plan. By Thursday, you will have an example in the drive to look back on when you're thinking about the new lesson plan that you are completing this week. Another thing I want to make sure that you guys know, that your lesson plans that you complete have to be relevant to your subject. So if you are science specifically, it needs to be some type of experiment. Every single person is science, so it does have to be some type of experiment, but definitely like not just an activity. There has to be a science to it. You have to be able to make it into an experiment. Now, if you're math science, it needs to include a lot of numbers. If you're art science, they need to be able to create something, right? So keep those in mind. Make sure you guys are standing on subject. All right, you guys, that is all for me. My litter boxes did not go off because I cut them off before the video started. I'm excited to see how this week goes. I'm very proud of every single one of you guys. If you have any question about your lesson plans or anything about program, reach out to me, reach out to your group leaders, and soon you will know who your managers are. If you don't know already, reach out to your managers. They have a lot of information. If you need any support, let us know. Make sure you plan your day efficiently so that you can be prepared. Again, if you know that you will not be available during our program time but still would like to get your attendance, plan ahead. Do it ahead of time, okay? Pledge smart, not hard. That's the best way I can think about it. Be smart. Don't make stuff harder than it has to be, right? It's not that complicated. Nothing that we're giving you is so difficult that you cannot do it on your own. It's all about wanting to do it. It's all about initiative. It's all about, you know, passion and really caring and wanting to be a camp counselor. I hope, oh, y'all, I'm choking. All right. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your Monday. Don't screenshot me. Don't tag me no more clips from my videos like y'all did last time. Don't come for me. Just complete your lesson plans, okay? All right. Love y'all. Mwah.